Some beautiful colors on the piece of paper. This is ultramarine blue. And I'm going to switch to some sap green also to actually give us some tree colors. You want to do this really, really wet. Lots of color, lots of water. This is some Imperial Purple by Daniel Smith. Going back to Cobalt Blue. If you want to throw some rose madder in to make more of a purple color, it's a great color to use. So I'm just doing kind of abstract to start with. Going back to some ultramarine blue. Going back to Imperial Purple. Going back to a little bit of the green color, sap green. Put that over here, let that blend into there. We'll use some of the sap green over here since we haven't done green in this section yet. Try not to create patterns, I'm just putting down color. And we're going to go back to, actually let's use a little bit of this. This is Rose of Ultramarine by Daniel Smith, which is a great company, great color. Back down to here, so we've got all these different tree shapes across here right now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of salt and sprinkle it in different areas. Now you're going to find that the salt has different effects on how dry the paper is or isn't, and on certain colors it reacts differently too. I'm going to take a little bit of the iodized salt. And if I can get this, and we're going to throw a little bit of that down there. And then I've got to let things sit and wait for a few minutes. Let the salt effects kick in here. So I did use a hairdryer for the last few minutes just to dry this guy because it was super, super wet. And still this beautiful texture here we've got from the use of the salt. And again, you know, it all depends on when you throw the salt down and which colors you use. So, you know, experiment with it, have fun. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab more of a liner brush here, which does finer details. This is my this is a silver velvet that you can't see it on the handle because everything's rubbed off on it. But I'm going to take a couple smaller brushes and mix up some darks using ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and a thicker mixture so it's more paint, less water. And then I'm going to come into here and I'm going to start working on some trunk shapes. Now we're going to make this big trunk here. And given trunks, try not to create patterns too much. So you have a big trunk there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to feather this a little bit and let that kind of blend up into there. And then I'm going to grab some more color. That was too much color right there. That was going to bleed out. And drop that there. It's a trunk that comes up into there. And I will be changing the color temperature quite a bit when I'm doing this. I'll go back and forth between the colors I've been using in the painting already, not introducing foreign ones. Here's a big trunk right there that goes up into there, kind of disappears there. You want to get soft edges, just rinse the brush, come back and touch it with water, let it touch and kiss. You can feather those edges pretty easily. And I'll grab some of the more ultramarine blue here. When you're making the darks, you just got to make things dark enough. Let's do a little branch here, a little trunk here. Another one that goes back that direction. Goes back over here. Knock back some edges while things are still wet. Some hard edges, some soft edges. And we're going to bring this from here up to here. Have it stop out there. And we'll make this trunk come this direction. And because I'm not trying to create patterns, I want some bigger shapes, I want some smaller shapes. And then I'm going to get some branches. We'll have some branches coming through here at different places. And this is just using just a little bit of paint on the brush, not too much. If it's too dark, take it off with a paper towel or a thirsty brush. Make that a little bit larger. And we're going to come over here. This is all wet, so I gotta keep my hand out of wet paint here. And we're going to do some smaller branches that are going off here. I have to switch to an even smaller brush now. Now I'm using a number 4. And I'm always trying to get some different variety within the tree shapes. Even smaller brush. If it all becomes the same shape, it kind of gets boring very quickly. So now I'm doing some just branches with a really small brush here. This is actually a photography spot toner, but I still have it from college. Have some branches coming in and out. Have them go behind things too, and that creates a little bit more hierarchy. It tells you what's foreground and what's background. That's too dark. Just take off a little bit of it. While things are still wet, you have the option to do that, but just don't dab with the dirty paper towel. And I'll come back over this side here. I'm trying to keep my hand out of wet paint. Easier said than done, of course. Make this branch a little bit bigger, or the trunk, I'm sorry. And just try not to create patterns with branches. Branches go all over the place, and that is the mistake I see beginners make all the time, where they start to make it too symmetrical, and trees are not symmetrical. That's how kids draw trees, but trees don't look that way. So now we're going to have some little branches coming up here, going across that, so it creates more hierarchy. We'll have some lighter branches, so I'm adding more water to my color right now, making it not as strong. And I'll come to the background here. So that tells you that that's in the background because it's not as dark. We're going to make that more of a green color with a lot of water. Just put a little something there. That was pretty watered down. Make it a little stronger. And let's go over here and make it a little bit lighter. There's a little branch back there. Tree trunk. Tree trunk in the background, not as dark, so I'll take off a little bit of color. A paper towel, and just make sure you're using a relatively clean paper towel. You don't want to use dirty paper towels. I do reuse all my paper towels over and over and over again, but the only time I don't reuse them is when I'm trying to keep the paper white. Well, let's go here. That tree's got some problems. He was out late. Remember, the darker things are going to look like they're coming forward more. And if they're closer to us, they should also be closer to the horizon line. So bring the line and bring this line down a little bit, and that reads as closer. And I'll bring this little trunk up in here, it's back that direction. You could have some things coming out through the white areas also. Let's have another tree trunk up in here going this direction. And that's branching off that way. And then what you have to do at the end here is you've got to get some sort of a shadow. So there has to be a sense of light coming from somewhere. This is a made up scene, so you can make it wherever you want to, but let's have all the light. Let's have the light coming from this source. And what I'm going to do now is I don't want to make the shadows as dark as the tree trunks. And shadows also, the further away they get from tree trunk, the lighter they're going to get. So if you start right here with some color, shadows are all going to be going this direction. Rinse the brush off, come back with mostly more water on the brush while all this stuff is still really wet, and touch it, bring it down here. And now what that does is that establishes where the light source is coming from. If you do it all this direction on some trees, you have to do it on the other ones too. Now the ones in the background aren't as important, but I am going to do just a little bit of some shadow here, just to continue. All this is still wet, so I am kind of risking wet areas bleeding into other areas I don't want them to go, but so I'm just bringing down those shadows there. Rinse the brush off, come back with just clean water, touch and kiss. And then finally, what I like to do for the foreground, and that tells you that it's a foreground. I got some color bleeding back up into here, so let's take that off. Is I take just a mixture of my color, the darker color, and this is when you use scrap pieces of paper. Just do a little bit of tapping in the foreground. You could use a little bit of gouache too, white color if you want to. I'm going to use a little bit of titanium white. This is just a watercolor, titanium white. And I'm going to spatter a little bit of white into that also. And there is a semi-completed tree scene. So I'm going to just kind of monitor, see if I want to make any changes. This is bleeding out here a little bit, so I'm going to soak this up a little bit with a thirsty brush. And then I think that is done. If you like this content, hit subscribe. I'll have more watercolor tutorials in the future. Thanks a lot and happy painting.